You can listen to The Professional Left wherever you get your podcasts, on Netroots Radio, or at our website, proleftpod.com, where you can also contribute to this podcast. There's a PayPal button at our website, or you can mail us a letter and or contribution at P.O. Box 9133, Springfield, Illinois, 62791.
This is the podcast for the week of January 17th, 2025. It's not safe for work.
Recorded live from the Cornfield Resistance, where this will be our last podcast of the Biden administration. And all around the internet, friends are asking each other what they plan to do on Inauguration Day. Well, we plan to treat it like any other Irish wake. There'll be some storytelling. Guarantee there'll be some glasses raised.
And in deference to my dad, some bagpipes.
It is awake because, as of Monday, something really important will have died. But the confusing thing is we're not exactly sure what it is that will have died. It's certainly not our innocence, because we lost that a long time ago, didn't we? And it's not American exceptionalism, because we sure as hell lost that a long time ago, too. It might be American democracy, but we can't know that right now. We're hoping that part of what has died is the residual naivete of some of our liberal friends and allies. Naivete about the media, naivete about millions of our fellow citizens. Goethe once said, the hardest thing to see is what is in front of your eyes. And for a lot of our allies, seeing just how genuinely awful and insane millions of our fellow citizens have been all along will be the hardest thing. Or how broken our media has been all along will be the hardest thing. This is where they will be most prone to relapsing and letting wishful thinking get in the way of pragmatic planning and navigation.
Friend of the pod, Julie Hotard, directed this question to Driftglass. When Trump and the Broligarchy F up, and they will, I'm curious how quickly the bootlickers will turn on them and pretend to be part of the resistance. And I have made the statement multiple times on and off this podcast that I think Trump's going to wind up like Mussolini. Not maybe physically, but the roaring crowds that cheered him will be the ones booing him.
Yes.
And it's really not, that Hotard question is really no longer that simple. And to explain why, we first have to turn to Professor Turgeson in Back to School.
Welcome to Contemporary American History. I'm Professor Turgeson. You know, a lot of people think history is just facts. It's just information about the past, but not me. I mean, I hold history very sacred. Sacred. The way the farmer looks at the earth and he holds it sacred. The way a Christian takes the Bible and he holds it sacred. The way a lot of people hold their marriage sacred. That's how I feel about it. So why don't we dive right in by interpreting one of the easiest events in the last 20 years of American history. Now, can someone tell me why in 1975 we pulled our troops out of Vietnam?
But the war we are going to review briefly with much, much less screaming, I hope, is George W. Bush's failed Iraq War, which turned out to be the coup de grace that broke millions of conservative brains, because it is not in the conservative nature to ever under any circumstances admit to being wrong. In fact, for decades, the only permissible way to own up to being wrong on the right was to confess that your opinions or tactics or whatever just weren't conservative enough.
Yep. I must have written 100 posts about, and Digby and you and everybody about, oh yeah, that's the problem. You didn't kick the poor hard enough. You weren't cruel enough. You weren't nasty enough. And even today, leading legacy media conservatives can be found either manufacturing excuses for why they weren't really, for real wrong, to back Bush's epic farrago of lies that put us into Iraq. This is from Tom Nichols, that very same Tom Nichols, in The Atlantic, March of 2023. Quote, I supported the invasion of Iraq, but a just cause doesn't make for a just war. 20 years after the United States led a coalition to overthrow Saddam Hussein, the conventional wisdom is now that the post-war fiasco proved the war was a mistake from its inception. The war, as it was executed, was indeed a disaster, but there was ample cause for launching it, unquote. Or you get the belligerent, fuck you liberal pose from people like Brett Stevens, who declared that Bush's clusterfuck was a great idea. This is from Brett Stevens, New York Times, March 21st, 2023. Quote, 20 years on, I don't regret supporting the Iraq War, unquote.
If you live through those times, you will no doubt remember the ferocious and, for a time, entirely successful conservative media campaign to paint the war as a rousing success, even as evidence of everything falling apart kept piling up.
Mm-hmm.
On the respectable side of town, every Sunday show was stacked 3 deep, with administration stooges and legacy media hacks, assuring everyone that it was all going according to plan. On the rougher side of town, the conservative bloggers and hate radio goofs were out in force, tagging anyone who whispered a discouraging word as a terrorist-loving, America-hating commie.
That's us, baby.
And if there were some rough spots, well, let's give it another 6 months before we start to worry.
Yeah, we did a whole podcast on that.
Did a whole podcast about the Friedman Unit. As Wikipedia notes, the Friedman Unit, or simply Friedman, is a tongue-in-cheek neologism. One Friedman Unit is equal to 6 months, specifically the next 6 months, a period repeatedly declared by New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman to be the most critical of the then ongoing Iraq War, even though such pronouncements extended back over 2.5 years.
Yeah. It was embarrassing. And he, of course, was never disciplined or fired, for being just an awful, awful hack. When I was rooting around for quotes about this time period, I went to the old news blog and found some stuff there that I'll talk about someday. I looked up Michelle Malkin and find out what she was doing, just to find out what people were thinking. And this is not a podcast about the Iraq War per se, but I will say that the number one booster of the Iraq War long after it had been lost and long after he was out of office was Liz Cheney's dad.
Yep.
Dick Cheney, who was like, I wouldn't change a thing. It was the right thing to do. It was the right thing to do, and we went to war for the right reasons, and fuck you, everybody. Yep. And that was like in 2018, he was saying shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? It all worked. For a while, it all actually worked. Until eventually the cost in blood and treasure of the catastrophe unfolding in Iraq became impossible to cover up anymore. Then came those torture revelations. The photographs out of Abu Ghraib that people like Peggy Noonan said are terrible, but we should just kind of ignore them and move on. Let's not dwell on those things. Sometimes things should be mysterious. Because what else are you going to say, right? And there was Terry Schiavo and Hurricane Katrina and the collapse of the global economy. And where did this massive deficit come from? What happened to our budget surplus? We had a budget surplus. Where did it go? So
define we. Who was we had a budget surplus, right?
Exactly. And all the people who said we would never have to worry about deficits again or recessions again, like David Brooks, who said, don't worry, the Democrats are being crazy for even suggesting that we're going to piss away the deficit with tax cuts. That can never happen. It can never happen in a million years. So what happened when the unmovable object of a party base that is, congenitally incapable of admitting mistakes collided with the irresistible force of a clusterfucked war and a drowned American city and a collapsing global economy? Well, very suddenly, like a fart in a cyclotron, the Republican base was gone, baby, gone. What Republican base? Why are you even talking to me about George Bush? I don't even know the guy. They were body swapped almost one for one with this huge crop of brand new, sing it with me now, Blue Gal, Independents. Suddenly, everybody's a fucking independent, right?
I'm an independent.
No, everybody's an independent. And this is what I wrote back about the Republican base back in 2009. Jesus, that was a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Like German soldiers after the fall of Berlin, they have stopped running away from the catastrophe they created only long enough to burn their uniforms, which is exactly what they did. And these independents were also rebranding themselves into the fake Tea Party that I wrote a shitload about too, onto which so much uncritical praise was heaped by lying and complicit legacy media who very definitely also did not want to dwell on who had been right and who'd been terribly, terribly wrong during the age of Bush because they had been terribly, terribly wrong and complicit with the whole fucking thing.
Absolutely. And this was so well funded.
Mm-hmm.
The rise of the Tea Party was absolutely astroturfed by Fox News and Dick Armey, and Glenn Beck was paid $1 million to promote it on his show.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Money, man. And it took MSNBC 2 years to announce a poll saying, oh, and by the way, these Tea Party people, they're all registered Republicans. They voted for Bush twice.
Yeah. Once the damage was done, they could shed the illusion. And the person who said that was Joe Scarborough.
Joe Scarborough and Chris Matthews, yeah.
Yeah. He was wandering past a TV set one day and looked at one of these Tea Party and goes, oh, those are my supporters. Oh, those aren't a bunch of Tea Party. Those are Republicans. Long after the damage had been done, Barack Obama had been hollowed out, and the Tea Party blunderbuss
had rebuilt the Republican Party.
Yeah.
You know, with no accountability whatsoever.
At all. The past was gone. It had been wiped away because we don't want to be held accountable for anything. Everything's the Democrats' fault. Everything that bad happens is because of liberals, or it never happened at all. And that's what we saw happening in real time during the Iraq War.
Yeah. When we revisit this same Republican base 16 years later, we find, wow, they never actually gave a shit about any of this stuff. They never cared about Iraq or New Orleans or torture or Terry Schiavo or the deficit.
Nope.
All they ever cared about was being right in a way that let them feel superior to stupid know-it-all liberals. Mm-hmm. And they've been programmed that way.
Yep.
Owning the libs, drinking liberal tears, smashing the left.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why they went all in on a dry, drunk half-wit like W. Bush twice. Because that was a giant fuck your feelings to Democrats, who had just finished paying off the deficits that Reagan and Bush Sr. had run up, balancing the budget and creating 20 million new jobs.
Ooh.
Because delivering on all of that stuff and more, things Republicans said were the most important things in the world, but had never once delivered on, did not make Republicans feel all warm and fuzzy inside. And you know, Clinton also kind of very tactically dealt with Kosovo.
Oh, yeah, he did.
And got in and got out.
Yeah, but he also, I mean, I did write a whole long-ass thing about this back in the day, but he also did a lot of things that we despised. We hated him for. You know, don't ask, don't tell, the Defense of Marriage Act, gay bashing, basically.
Compromising with Republicans on budget stuff.
Kicking all the, kicking people off of welfare.
Yep. Without any backup for all of the programs that were going to help them get jobs and so forth. Yeah.
Well, and that was I think there were like 5 different options that he was given by Newt Gingrich, and he finally negotiated one where you had a 5-year cap. It was the least awful option. Mm-hmm. But he was, I think I wrote at the time, the most successful Republican president since Lincoln.
Yeah.
And he did all the things they wanted. He did everything that they said that they valued, and they fucking hated him for it.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep. They hated Bill Clinton for it, and so much that they lawfared his ass.
Yes, they did.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And they impeached him and tried to remove him from office over a blowjob. Mm-hmm. Now, you can argue that the stupidity of Bill Clinton on that score, absolutely.
Sure.
But this was lawfare. You want to talk about lawfare? Every accusation is a confession.
Well, and when you have a special prosecutor who comes to you and says, Whitewater is nothing, it's a land deal that went bad. Oh, fuck you, you're fired. Let's get another special prosecutor.
Yeah.
Give him a bag of money.
Get one that'll find something this time.
Find anything. Find something, find anything. Because the plan was get rid of Clinton, then get rid of Al Gore for supporting Clinton, and then Newt Gingrich gets to be president because he's third in line for the office.
Because he's the savior of our civilization, right?
Again, all extraordinarily well-funded. The whole Arkansas project was extraordinarily well-funded. And then what happened? Well, after they'd given their loyalty to W, they weren't just shown to be utterly and humiliatingly wrong. They were shown to be utterly and humiliatingly wrong in front of the liberals. And there's nothing worse. The agonies of 1,000 demons getting holy water enemas couldn't hold a candle to how badly they felt being humiliated in front of the liberals, having a bunch of liberals say, we fucking told you so. And that's, to this day, why liberals don't get invited to the party, because we bring receipts, and talking about the past is anathema to these people. But stop and consider for a moment the mechanics of this. How were they shown to be utterly and humiliatingly wrong? by what means did that happen? Through what lens? Because as we all know, these people have no problem just wishing away anything they don't want to believe. Like the January 6th coup. What? That was Antifa, right? Everyone knows that was Antifa. That's a settled matter. Or, oh, I'm sorry, that was Nancy Pelosi. Everyone knows that. Oh, it was the DC cops, obviously. That's a settled matter. It was Capitol Police. Oh, it was FBI infiltrators. Definitely Wait a minute. Maybe it was actually a good thing. Maybe it was actually
patriots,
Driftglass. It was a holy thing. Maybe they were patriots. Maybe the 2020 election really was stolen. And those coup plotters are actually martyrs and political prisoners. They went through this whole spectrum of lies and nonsense because they just didn't want to believe what was happening right in front of them and was absolutely, demonstrably, easily, verifiably true. They just wished it away, and it worked. Look who's president. Look who's going to be president next week.
The difference between the before time and now is that back then it was still possible for a tiny bit of light from the outside world to leak into their ideological bunker. Mm-hmm. Republicans could still see the failures in Iraq and Bush's criminally incompetent response to Hurricane Katrina through a small, cracked legacy media window on the wider world. And I will say that both of those things, that was David Brooks, right?
Right.
He could not make excuses for Bush about Katrina.
Mm-mm.
And he told the NewsHour, I just can't do it.
And I wrote the one column I ever wrote in my entire life saying he was right. David Brooks is right. There's no excuse for this. It was criminally incompetent, and I cannot defend this. It's indefensible.
Yep. And that was just on the face of it. The film proved that he had failed as president, period.
Ample warning, and he had staffed FEMA with incompetence and had just sat there like an idiot while the disaster unfolded and completely fucked up the response. Let people die because he was criminally incompetent. Yep.
So what lessons did they take from being humiliated by Bush's lies and incompetence? The lesson that those holes and leaks need to be boarded up and spackled over right now.
Right. You know, the Pat Buchanan lesson, burn the tapes.
Burn the tapes.
Don't be honest, for God's sakes. Burn the evidence. Destroy the evidence. That will get us off the hook.
Yeah, no. Nixon should have never allowed those tapes to see the light of day.
That's right.
Cover up on steroids is what we're talking about. He didn't do enough covering up. Mm-hmm. So the next time they needed to hire an even bigger, louder liar telling even bigger, louder lies, one who would never, ever back down in the face of a potentially humiliating reality like tens of thousands of people dying of COVID.
Right.
I take no responsibility for that.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
But would unflinchingly live out this lesson from a guide for the married man.
See. Now, just one final word.
Yeah?
If Ruth should hear something or should get suspicious, it won't happen, I promise you, but just in case.
Yeah?
Deny, deny, deny. No matter what she knows or thinks she knows, deny it.
But what if she really knows?
Deny it.
But what if she really... But what if
deny. Deny.
Yeah, the Republican base didn't want the truth. They didn't want reality. They didn't want facts. They demanded and they got a conservative media completely aligned with the will of their new dear leader. And the last vestiges of news have been purged from their news media. And all their talking heads now lie about everything without apology. And several of those talking heads are going to be the heads of departments in the government now. From now on, it's all propaganda all the time. And the Republican elected officials know that they had damn well better sing out their enthusiastic support for their party's new Stalinist direction. So, in response to the original question that got me going on this subject, how quickly will the bootlickers turn on Trump and the broligarchy once they fuck up? I would answer that the question itself reflects a pre-Trump understanding of how the GOP works now. To misquote the old communist excuse for why communism never worked, Trumpism cannot fail. Trumpism can only be failed. And the violent, brainwashed, zombie Republican base will not tolerate being humiliated in front of the liberals ever again. So all failures, all disasters, all future bloodshed, all the corruption, all the selling the country out, all the treason will all be January 6th. Now, I
want to just interrupt you for a moment with one caveat.
Sure.
Which is, yes, Trump himself can never fail or be he will only be failed.
Right.
But the infighting between Bannon and Vivek and Musk and whoever else
Mm-hmm.
might just bring down and splinter whatever else is going on in the Republican Party.
It's possible, but I think we forget that this is a trap, sort of a verbal and psychological trap that people on the right kept walking into, which is why there's a group of people called Never Trumpers now.
Yeah,
and that is that Bill Kristol and Tom Nichols and David French thought they were the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And they were cool with people like Rick Wilson and Lee Atwater and Matthew Dowd, turning the base over time, and Rush Limbaugh and Hate Radio, turning the base into a bunch of reprogrammable meatbags because that served their interest. What they never figured out was somebody else can grab the controls.
Yeah.
And now the base wants what it wants. And the reason they went for Trump is that's who they wanted. This is why these people never saw Trump coming. This is why they laughed at the very idea that he would ever be nominated. This is why it was going to be Rubio.
Right.
This is why when he started knocking people off in the Republican primaries, they couldn't fucking believe it. And we were over on the left saying, but he's the base.
Yeah.
He's speaking to them in Rush Limbaugh language. He is who they are.
And Fox News language. He's repeating, and that's why there are all these primary voters who are not just Republicans.
No.
Republican primary voters are a very special case.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard over and over again in these focus groups, he's saying what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
You're not thinking. You're just hearing Hannity and Hannity and Hannity.
Right. Hannity takes
Trump's giving you Hannity.
Yeah.
And so, this makes so much sense to me.
Right.
Yes.
There was that old computer program, I think it was at Harvard or MIT, called Liza.
Yeah.
Which was in the 70s. And the faculty started using this thing for therapy.
Therapy, right.
But all Liza would do is designed to pass a Turing test, and it didn't, but it was very clever. It would take whatever statement you made, find the noun or the verb or whatever the action was going on in the word, and turn it into a question.
Yep.
My mother's angry at me. Tell me more about your mother. Well, things happened bad when I was a child. Tell me about your childhood. And it really is just mechanically feeding back to these people what they already believe in here. Mm-hmm. So all Trump ever did was try shit out until the audience applauded and then went with that. Mm-hmm. And what they applauded was Rush Limbaugh vocabulary and Newt Gingrich politics. That's what the base wanted, because that's what 30 and 40 years of conditioning had taught them was their due. That's why they never took responsibility for what they did to Clinton. That's why they stuck with Bush. That's why they attacked Obama. They'd been trained to turn on a dime and believe nothing based on whatever the guy on top told them was the new reality. What the people at the top, was George Will and those assholes never thought through was what happens when a rich, lying asshole comes along who just cuts out the middleman.
Yep.
Just as, I will be your president, I will also be Rush Limbaugh. I hate black people too. I hate Mexicans. Women are ugly, dog-faced, or they have big tits and they're there for fucking.
Yeah,
and
right.
Everyone in the George Will circle went, oh my God, this guy's gross. He's so crude. And they collapsed onto their fainting couches, while tens of millions of the base voters said, finally, this is the guy. He speaks our language. And so the base is going to get what the base wants. Now, maybe they can be convinced to want something else because they are, in fact, stupid sheep who can be easily led anywhere. But they want to make liberals cry. Mm-hmm. And whichever candidate, after Trump, gets the magic hamburger and collapses, promises to make the liberals cry, will get 70 million votes based on that. Nothing more. Now, it might be that a tiny handful of Trump ass-kissers will finally reach their gag reflex limit and sneak off to pretend, yay, we were part of the resistance the whole time. We were working from within. We've all heard this before with the late-stage Never-Trumpers. But for the other 99% of the party, whatever shit blows up in their face will be chalked up to fake news, or it was all part of the giant liberal conspiracy, or it never happened, or somehow it was really a good thing. Because that's how they think. And that's my prediction about what's going to happen, is the base, we're stuck with the base. The base is like carbon in the atmosphere. It's like we're stuck with it. We could stop pumping it out. That'd be great. But the shit that's there now is there now. And it's going to affect our political weather for decades to come. And there's no getting around the fact that these people want an oligarchy. They want tyranny. They want the end of democracy because it'll make liberals cry. And it's not a lot more complicated than that.
Yep. So if you have the stomach for it, you can watch the legacy media bending the knee in real time. And by the way, Driftglass, have you heard the Washington Post's new slogan?
Really?
This is being reported in the New York fucking Times because they cover each other. Quote, the Washington Post began trying out a new mission statement this week.
Oh,
this
joy.
is after 400 staffers signed a letter begging Jeff Bezos to turn things around.
Yeah. Oh, I'm losing how many hundreds of thousands of subscribers?
Well, they lost 300,000 the first week
Yeah.
subscribers the first week that Jeff Bezos says we're not going to endorse anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gone downhill from there, including us.
Yeah.
I mean, we were online subscribers. Not anymore. So the new mission statement is, quote, riveting storytelling for all of America. Comes
Jesus.
amid turmoil in the newsroom, says the New York fucking Times. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, we got to talk about riveting storytelling.
We have to, Blue Gal.
Like, Brer Rabbit or Mike Mulligan and his steam shovel.
Yeah.
The Mickey Mouse Adventures.
Yeah. What were the books we were talking about yesterday from childhood?
Well, Where the Wild Things Are and the Big Green Book and all those Maurice Sendak stories. Yeah.
Those are all riveting. And Dr. Seuss, of course,
They are
is very
riveting, though. They are riveting, though.
Mm-hmm.
But those cocky Democrats thought they had Brer Trump for sure this time. But that wily Brer Trump was too clever for them. And now they're caught in their own trap.
That's going to be some great storytelling, Blue Gal.
Storytelling.
Great, yeah. Not news.
They want subscribers in Ohio. They want red state Ohioans to subscribe to their paper to be informed about what's happening in Washington, D.C. It reminds me of all of those Sangamon County Republican dinners where they hire, all the worst people to come and be the keynote speaker at their chicken dinner every year. And the description of what that person is going to talk about is what's going on in Washington.
That's right.
Which is because we're out in the hinterland and we want to know what's going on in Washington.
What's really going on? Well, and the last one they hired last year was this Homan fella who's going to be in charge of detention camps and deporting people.
He spoke here in Sangamon County to the Republican Party.
Yeah, on Lincoln Day dinner. They paid him to come to town to talk to the rank and file, the loyal local Republicans.
Anybody who's been on Fox more than 4 times is eligible.
Yeah. So that's why we actually know what we're talking about, because we live among people who will pay money to go see this asshole talk.
Yeah.
Who will go pay money and have paid money to go hear Kellyanne Conway, or Charlie Kirk was a couple years ago, or Corey Lewandowski a few years before that, who will pay money to sit in a room and eat rubber chicken and listen to these people talk. That's who they are. That's why I have every confidence the base of the Republican Party is not going to suddenly discover that reality is a tasty after-dinner treat that they'd like to consume. They will pay
rice pilaf, Driftglass.
Yeah, they will pay anyone any amount of money to keep reality the hell out of their backyard and to blame the liberals for every bad thing that happens.
Right.
And there's a plenty of people lining up to take that job, which is why this ugly fact about our reality now and for the next several years just has to inform our political strategies going forward.
It has to.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the confirmation hearings, Driftglass, this week had a definite kabuki theater vibe to them.
Yeah.
It was either ignore and drive around Democrats' questions or get coddled by the Republicans on the committees. And here's Mrs. Betty Bowers. You remember Mrs. Betty Bowers.
Oh, yeah.
She's a Christian.
She's America's
She's now
best
on Blue
Christian.
Sky. Mm-hmm. Yes, America's favorite Christian. She's now on Blue Sky. And this is her translation of the Bondi testimony.
Mm-hmm.
At her hearing, Pam Bondi was evading questions. She was lying in her answers. Senator, is it Wednesday today? Pam Bondi, I really can't speculate. Senator, do you agree with the statement Mr. Trump has made hundreds of times on television? Pam Bondi, I'm not familiar with that, Senator. The senator says, do you promise to uphold the 14th Amendment? Pam Bondi, the what? I'll have to look into that, Senator. Senator, did you take a $25,000 bribe from Mr. Trump? Pam Bondi, I'm afraid I don't recall. Now, this is Blue Gal talking. She definitely took a $25,000 bribe from Donald Trump.
Yep.
Pete Hegseth's testimony consisted of the Southern Evangelicals' favorite get-out-of-responsibility-free card, something that drives me crazy. I'm not perfect. I'm just forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
Washed in the blood of the Lamb, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go right on drinking, but I promise not to while I'm at work.
Sure.
He said that over and over again. He's not the DEI candidate, but he is the DUI candidate.
Yeah, he sure as hell is.
He's going to be defense under the influence.
At the beginning of the hearing, Blue Gal, there were 2 microphones in front of Pete Hegseth, and then by the end there was only 1 microphone. And the 1 microphone was when Jesus picked him up and carried him the rest of the way.
Across the sand.
Because
he was too drunk to walk.
Because goddamn if Jesus wasn't his co-counsel or defense attorney.
God.
And it was the same goddamn thing over and over again. And
whitewash.
I did turn to the font of wisdom to whom I always turn to find out what smart Americans are thinking about this. I turned to David Brooks. And,
really? I think like 300 people wrote you to tell you, oh, by the way, you should read David Brooks today.
Yes.
Yeah.
The headline, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to quote freestyle. We're doing it live, Blue Gal. We're doing it live. Was Pete Hegseth is the Secretary of Defense we deserve. We. The word we was used over 800,000 times in this column he wrote because we. Our society, us, all of us, we. What I can tell you is that for people like David Brooks and Adam Kinzinger, by the way, he gets in on this action too. The both sides do it trope is going to make a big comeback in the next few years.
Oh, yeah.
Because David Brooks ferreted out who is mostly to blame for the fact that a scumbag like Pete Hegseth is almost certainly going to be given the job of running the most powerful military in human history. Can you guess who is mostly to blame for this?
Liberals?
It's the Democrats. It's the Democrats. It's not the party that nominated Donald Trump in 2016, which David Brooks said would never happen. It's not the party that elected him, which David Brooks said would never happen. It's not the party that renominated him in 2020, and he barely lost. It's not the party that re-nominated him last time, and he won this time. And it's not the fault of all the senators and all the congressmen and all the conservative media, all the Republicans who've laid down for this guy and made him a straight road to the White House. Those people are not at fault, Blue Gal. Mm-hmm. The fault lies with Democrats who didn't ask the right questions at the hearing. Yes.
I see.
Which I'm calling the conformation hearings, because everybody has to conform to what the dear leader wants now.
Yeah.
And so David Brooks runs his mouth half the column just chiding Elizabeth Warren for not asking the right questions and why are you talking about woke? And this might be valid, but there are more important issues. And it really is. He really is invested in the lie that somehow, if the Democrats had just asked exactly the right question at exactly the right time, a sufficient number of Republican senators would have had the scales fall from their eyes and realize that Pete Hegseth is a drunk scumbag sex pest who should never have been allowed within a million miles of that chair.
Right.
But since Democrats didn't ask the right questions, well, and
he doesn't wash his hands.
Yeah,
ever.
There's a whole bunch of shit, and Brooks was just mad that Democrats didn't ask the right questions in the right way, and they wasted their time. And it was, even though everyone knows, as you said, this is just kabuki.
It is.
This was just, everyone knows who's going to win the nominations because everyone knows.
And Republicans set the rules for the hearing.
Right.
So you weren't allowed to bring Fox and Friends video into the hearing room and say, here's a video of you saying this. Here's a video of you saying this. How do you defend this statement? That they got one question or 5 minutes of questioning and that's it. One time.
And I will admit that they could coordinate better. They could have handed all the questions to one person. They could have acted like a prosecutor, none of which would have made a goddamn bit of difference. Nope. And everybody knows it.
Yep.
And everyone knows it. But And Brooks even sneaks in like, well, the Republicans were actually stronger in their questioning than the Democrats were because so-and-so asked such and such one or two tough questions. Great. And, Jesus loves me. Yes, I know. I'm forgiven. I'm an imperfect person. I think women should be able to serve in the military, blah, blah, blah.
Even though I said 2 months ago, I said they shouldn't. Yeah.
And it because it's just theater.
Yep.
And everyone's sitting around the table knows it's fucking theater. And the same thing with all the nominations. They might knock off a few of them here and there, but this is the way things are going to be. And Adam Kinzinger, I was listening to him yesterday on a podcast that I will not name, and he went on the same thing. Oh, Democrats, they should have done this, they should have done that, they should have questioned better. A whole 7-minute just rant about Democrats didn't do the right thing and ask the right questions in the right way, and they went off in the wrong direction, and they focused too much on culture stuff, culture issues, blah, 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 blah. And at the end of it, he said, but of course everyone knows it's all kabuki, and none of this matters. Like, well, fuck you, say it at the top. Maybe if it didn't matter what any Democrat did, you shouldn't spend half your time on this podcast shitting on Democrats.
Right.
Maybe you should be shitting on Republicans for nominating this fucker in the first place. Or that all the Republicans are going to vote for this fucker in the first place. Or your party nominating Trump over and over again, electing him twice. Maybe that's the demon in the equation. Maybe you're the bad guys. But we can't say that. We have to find a way to survive in the both sides do it universe of blaming Democrats some which way for all of this.
Yeah.
And then he said, but history, Blue Gal. History.
Oh, we're speaking to our children when we question these. Right.
Someday, one of these
for
days,
posterity, we have to stand up.
Your grandkids are going to dig through these records and wonder what Meemaw was doing at the hearing. Meemaw, why didn't you ask that bad man who launched World War III harder questions? And Meemaw will just be ashamed that she didn't do a better job of questioning Pete Hegseth. And I've heard it said more than once, and I believe it to be true, that appeals to history are these secular requests for divine intervention.
Yeah.
I want justice, and I can't appeal to God, but I can appeal to history.
Right.
And that's what that was. Yeah. And so everyone knows what's going to happen with the confirmation hearings, and everyone knows who's to blame, but we got to blame Democrats somehow. And so we're just going to go ahead and take a swing at them. And that's the world we're going to be living in.
Let's do a news roundup.
I would love to do a news roundup with you, darling.
Cornfield Resistance persists.
We do.
From The Guardian, is that a joke? Biden asked whether Trump was responsible for Gaza ceasefire.
Yeah.
Quote, Joe Biden has announced a ceasefire deal between Hamas and the Israeli government. It is due to begin on 19 January, the day before the U.S. president leaves office, and will include the release of hostages detained by Hamas and Israel. When a journalist asked Biden, who do you think deserves credit for this, you or Trump? Dark Brandon said, is that a joke?
Way to go, Dark Brandon.
Yeah.
This is also from The Guardian, and it uses that awful P word that we're trying to get everyone to look down on and sneer at and say, what you're really trying to say is both sides. Please stop doing that. Please stop using that. A little
bomb ought to go off in your brain when you hear this P word.
Right. And they use the awful P word in describing President Joe Biden's farewell address. Quote, polarized reactions to Biden's farewell speech validate divisions he highlighted, which is an Ouroboros of a sentence. It consumes its own tail.
Yep.
Responses from lawmakers underline the very democratic fragility the president looked to highlight. Speaking from the Oval Office for the final time before President-elect Donald Trump's return to power, on Wednesday, Biden sounded an alarm about America's future. Today, an oligarchy is taking shape in America, which is true, he said, and that poses a challenge to our basic rights and freedoms, which is also true. Biden urged the U.S. to beware of what he described as a growing tech-industrial complex, appearing to deliberately echo the 1961 farewell address by a previous president, Dwight Eisenhower, whose warning of a military-industrial complex became a byword for the overreach of American corporate power in the democratic sphere. My only disagreement with this paragraph is the word appearing.
He absolutely said Eisenhower in his speech.
It's very much, that's the point of doing it that way.
Yes.
Biden's remarks amounted to a not-so-veiled jab at the tech billionaires, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Jeff Bezos, who have collectively not just amassed hitherto unseen wealth, but have all recently made public gestures for support for Trump. All three are expected to attend Trump's inauguration on Monday.
And they're going to sit with the cabinet nominees.
Yeah.
That's going to be a picture.
That's an oligarchy. That's what an oligarchy is.
Yep.
Within hours, however, Biden's speech had devolved into another P word, partisan battle.
Oh, man.
Perhaps the clearest illustration of the political division that has dogged his presidency. Really? Just his presidency? Really? Really? The bomb-throwing right who's been out to destroy the Democratic Party since before Bill Clinton? And you're just noticing now that there's this political division? No. The arsonists and the firemen are not on two equal footings of the same debate. The people trying to burn the system down are the bad guys. Mm-hmm. The people trying to put the fire out are the good guys, which is something apparently you're not allowed to say in The Guardian. President Biden delivered his farewell address to a nation that is stronger because of his leadership. The former House Speaker and California Representative Nancy Pelosi wrote on X, which is true. She praised what she called 4 historic years of progress, hope, and unity for American families. I would go for progress, definitely, hope, yes, and unity, no. Sorry about that. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Republican lawmakers appeared to see in a different speech entirely. Joe Biden's legacy in one word, failure. The Georgia Representative Andrew Clyde said on X. Cool. Who are you, Andrew Clyde? Who do you work for? The South Carolina Representative Nancy Mace, this is going to be good, accused Biden of using his farewell not looking at China, Russia, and Iran, but to attack American citizens by calling them oligarchs and a threat to democracy. You mean Elon Musk, right?
Elon Musk is an actual citizen?
Apparently he is. I didn't realize that.
If he didn't have billions of dollars, you'd be wanting to deport him.
Yes, you would. Peter Thiel, another South African weirdo who wants to destroy America. Yeah, no, Nancy Mace is just a waste of carbon. So, but she got her 2 cents in, and she was quoted in The Guardian. So there you go.
From the Tennessee Holler, quote, an FTC report under Chair Lena Khan, who Elon hates, by the way, and Trump is going to replace her, and we're going to miss her.
Mm-hmm.
But the FTC report finds that United Healthcare has been overcharging cancer patients an obscene amount, and pharmacy benefit managers have been pocketing extra billions of dollars thanks to this incredibly corrupt private insurance company.
Yep.
And this is the company whose CEO was shot on the street in New York City.
Yeah, which
no comment.
Obliterated all other news on the headlines for days and days because, you shot who? Who got shot? No, this is not a gangbanger. This is an important person. This is one of us.
Yeah.
Meta lawyer Lemley quits AI case citing Zuckerberg dissent. Quote, California attorney Mark Lemley dropped Meta Platforms Incorporated as a client in a high-profile copyright case because of CEO Mark Zuckerberg's, quote, descent into toxic masculinity and neo-Nazi madness. The Stanford University professor said on LinkedIn, because that's where all the cool kids are hanging out now, guys.
Is LinkedIn? Nobody goes on LinkedIn.
TikTok is dead. Facebook is dead. X is dead. Come on, join us on LinkedIn and Friendster. We'll see you on Friendster.
I guess that's the other one.
Yeah.
Brian Tyler Cohen reports, Republicans are now blocking an effort to allow new mothers in Congress to vote remotely shortly after giving birth. GOP Representative Chip Roy says, quote, I don't give a crap who you are or whether you just had a baby in the last weeks. That is directly aimed at a party that has younger women in it, which your party does not, Chip Roy.
Well, it is just, we get to be assholes now.
We get to be
assholes all the time now. And our base loves it, so just look forward to a lot more of this. As you probably have noticed, Donald Trump has spent much of his time leading up to his inauguration backing off from his promises, lying about
all
things,
of them, yes,
pretending he never said what he said, and so forth. And in yet another massive reversal of one of his biggest promises, his special envoy for Ukraine and Russia said that this about the timetable for ending that war, quote, let's set it at 100 days and move all the way back and figure a way we can do this in the near term to make sure that the solution is solid, is sustainable, and this war ends, unquote. As my wife noted, in 2 weeks or 100 days or 6 months. Is Tom Friedman working on the staff now? Yeah.
The next 6 months are going to be critical.
They're going to be crucial.
We're going to end the war in 1 day. 100 days. 2 weeks.
Well,
this is a concept of a plan to end the war, right?
In my very words, because this was the healthcare plan. On day one, we're going to have excellent healthcare for pennies such as you've never seen before.
And it'll be so easy, he said.
And it's not that this guy just is a barrel of vomit and lies. It's that 70 plus million Americans are stupid enough and racist enough to buy it over and over
every
again.
time.
They don't buy rat poison once, they bought it 3 fucking times.
Yep. Senator Joni Ernst announced her support for Pete Hegseth's nomination as defense secretary, increasing his chances of Senate confirmation despite allegations against him of sexual assault and concerns about his records. Concerns, Driftglass.
Concerns. There's some concerns.
Ernst, initially skeptical of Hegseth's candidacy due to allegations of sexual assault and financial mismanagement of veterans organizations, I will add, cited private assurances. In other words, he's not perfect. He's just forgiven.
He's just forgiven.
And his commitments to Pentagon audits. Pentagon audits, everybody. They have already failed their audits 5 times since the audit's induction in 2018. The Pentagon's internal audits have failed 5 times. Joni Ernst also said that he addressed sexual assault in the military and ensures opportunities for women in combat as reasons for her support. She is a gullible ninny.
I think she just wants to collect favors. I think
she wants to collect favors, and she doesn't want death threats to her office. That's it.
And the whole thing about women in combat, this is not something he said in his teens. He said this like 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
And a really good question would have been, what was your road to Damascus moment?
Yeah, when did you realize? Yeah.
Who you've now cited 72,000 times in your testimony, knocked the scales from your eyes and made you realize what you said 2 months ago was bullshit. When was that? What room were you in? Was Jesus present in the room? Did you have a vision? But of course, that's irrelevant because it's all just theater. It's all just performance.
Well, and as you say, if the Democrats ran that committee, there would be video of all of these things that he said.
Oh, absolutely.
On Fox and Friends. And let's roll the tape and have you defend your record. Yeah.
A party of traitors from top to bottom. Now, a reminder that in light of the California fires, which are still burning in some places, ex-Trump aides say that back in 2018, Donald Trump refused to give California wildfire aid until he was told how many people there voted for him. This is from Politico. And the last few lines hit really hard considering the day we are now in and what's coming up in our near future. Quote, Mark Harvey, who was Trump's senior director for resilience policy on the National Security Council staff, told E&E News on Wednesday that Trump initially refused to approve disaster aid for California after deadly wildfires because of the state's Democratic leanings. Straight up gangster shit. Mm-hmm. But Harvey said Trump changed his mind after Harvey pulled voting results to show him that heavily damaged Orange County, California had more Trump supporters than the entire state of Iowa. Yeah, there are more Republicans in California than anywhere else, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
He went as far as looking up how many votes he got in those impacted areas to show him these people are people who voted for you, said Harvey, who recently endorsed, wait for it, Vice President Kamala Harris, alongside more than 100 other Republican former national security officials.
I wonder why.
And a fat lot of good that did. I mean, I'm not looking down my nose at the endorsement, but it misses the point that the entire party from top to bottom are traitors, morons, and
anyone
scum.
who's going along with this does not give a shit about our national security.
No, at all.
Period.
The exchange, not previously reported, drew a dumbfounded response on social media Thursday from President Joe Biden, who summed up Trump's attitude as, you can't only help those in need if they voted for you. It's the most basic part of being president. And this guy knows nothing about it. This is something that Biden posted on X, reacting to a tweet about an earlier version of this article. Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom piled on, calling the episode, quote, a glimpse into the future if we elect Trump, unquote.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
and here we are.
That future is here.
Yep. We love you guys.
We do. Hang in
Keep
there.
the faith, because you're not perfect. You're just forgiven.
You're forgiven. And by the way, this is our last podcast for the Biden administration, but it's not our last podcast.
Oh, no.
We're going to be on regular as clockwork until the last dog dies.
And we need your financial and moral support.
Yeah, and emotional support.
And emotional support.
Because, digging through this stuff as we do every day, and you
Not
editing
easy.
editing for Crooks and Liars every day is
every day. Yeah, 5 days a week.
Takes a bit of a toll. But hey, 15 years the coalface, honey. 15 years.
15 years we've been doing this. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I met you 17 years ago, face to face, met you.
You did.
And we knew each other online for a long time.
Yeah.
But I met you face to face 17 years ago next month.
Yeah.
And we're still going strong.
Yeah. It worked out. It worked out good.
It worked out. We've been, I don't want to get into it too much, but we have observed with our 20-something children different stages of drama with relationships.
Yes.
And it makes us very grateful to be in our 60s and have been married for 15 years and plus and so forth.
Well,
so
the only real speed bump was a couple of years ago when you sprung it on me that you have kids. So what?
By the way, I have 3 children. What?
I thought these were boarders. I thought they were paying us rent. What the hell? What the hell, woman? You
helped raise them, I'll tell you. You're still very defending of the young people.
I do like to show the potential daters.
Yes.
The spots in the backyard where the last daters
and nobody's going to miss you.
Departed, broke my kids' hearts. Just so you know. We can get along just fine as long as you know I know where you live and I have a shovel. Just rent Uncle Buck and watch the last 20 minutes. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, each week we post to our Patreon page and website an Internet Kitty sent in by you, the listeners. This week's Internet Kitties, plural, are Blanche and Stella. Blanche and Stella live together. And Stella, these are 2 separate pictures I put together. Stella is in the back of a pickup truck in her picture. And of course, Blanche and Stella eat freshly poured cat food, our fake sponsor. Whether you serve pet store perfection or dollar store direct, your cats will sit on the kitchen floor or the back of a pickup truck and demand that the food they eat is only freshly poured.
Freshly poured, freshly poured. Oh my Lord, it's freshly poured.
And you can visit Blanche and Stella at our Patreon page, patreon.com/proleftpod, or our website, proleftpod.com. And you can send your Internet Kitty dog or other pet to us, multiple pets, farmyard, barnyard pets. We don't care if they're in an aquarium. Any pet that you love, an animal that you love, we'd love to share them with our audience. Send them to us with the subject line Internet Kitty to proleftpodcast@gmail.com, where you can write to both of us. Feel free to write us. We love hearing from you. Be aware that if you write to us, either via email or U.S. Postal Service, go Postal Unions, we reserve the right to read those letters on the air unless you say otherwise.
Sidebar, Blue Gal, I'm wondering, are we going to be appearing on anyone else's podcast in the near future?
We are.
Really?
We are going to be on the Bob Seska podcast on January 22nd. And then we are going to be on the Progress Pondcast. And that's the first week in February. I think we're recording that on February 1st. And that's with some OG bloggers. So
yes.
They've been podcasting for a year over there. So we want to give them some of our time. They asked. And if you have a podcast that's been going regularly and consistently for more than 6 months, and I think that's fair to ask you to do that first.
Yeah.
And your left-wing politics or science fiction. Ask, just send us an email and we'll find time as long as your, technology allows you to record us from our laptops and you've been consistent about posting and you're serious about being a podcaster.
Yeah.
No charge. We'd be glad to be on your show.
Absolutely. And Blue Gal means what she says about science fiction. My intentions mean nothing, by the way. My intentions mean absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
I make plans, God laughs in my face.
Yeah.
My intention was that one of our 2 podcasts this week would be Science Fiction University. I had stuff lined up. I've got a bunch of books I think would be amazing. I think Stand on Zanzibar is a little bit thick, but it makes some good points. We've got
we've dug out our DVD copy of Fahrenheit 451 to watch, and we haven't watched it yet. It would just been
sitting
crazy.
There have been young people around, and
we've
a lot
had
of
kids home still, and again, yes.
I'm sure most of you understand that here's your intention, and then your muse grabs you by the collar and says, "Nope, you're doing this now."
Yeah.
Okay, got to do that. So this week was Political Stuff Tuesday, Political Stuff Thursday, but soon, I'm going to go back and get my science fiction thing on with my beautiful wife, and we'll have a science fiction university, and you will love it, and it'll be great, and it'll be awesome. But until then,
I think you also need to be on a podcast where you scream for 20 minutes about which is the best Star Trek sequel TV show.
Right. I think that's a great idea. It's a great idea. And why was Star Trek the Animated Series canceled? That was the greatest injustice American television has ever seen.
I mean, how else could you illustrate Spock's pet?
Yes.
But in animation.
And all of those little lessons in logic, the various forms of logic that crop up on the internet use that animation template to demonstrate the Spockian logic of it.
Spock knew all about logic, and he taught about it. Yes.
Well, hell, guess what? This is now retroactively a science fiction university podcast. So never mind. And literally, as you all know, probably by now, or I've mentioned once or twice, my studio is literally a tiny folding table shoved into my own clothes closet.
Yes.
Because the acoustics, it kills the echo pretty well. And a borrowed microphone or a donated microphone and a donated laptop, which I'm
very generously donated equipment.
Very grateful for. But the microphone is not quite high enough to be optimally positioned for my big fat mouth. So every week I put it on top of the box set of season 1 of Battlestar Galactica. So, but I swear to God, it's true. It's right under there.
Believe me, it is.
It is. It's part of my setup ritual. So, I live this stuff. I have science fiction all around me. And I really like talking about it. And
which is why he's married to me.
Exactly. Well,
I want to tell you guys the look on his face when he discovered that I already owned the Best Time Travel Stories compilation book.
You what? In fact,
this is my girlfriend. She owns time travel stories.
We gave that book to the priest or to the judge and said, we'd rather have our vows read out of this.
No, we didn't.
No, we did not. But,
and then we were in the bank getting ready to deposit some checks, and we were waiting, and I said, I wanted to share this article in Governing Magazine with you, Driftglass.
I said, God, you're sexy.
He did. He said, shut your dirty mouth.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus. So believe me, given the shit show that the last 10 years have been, 30 years, 40 years, let's not lie, and the shit show that's coming our way, I love taking a break and flexing different muscles and using different parts of my brain and talking about something I really enjoy, really love. And unfortunately is saturated with apocalyptic stuff, which I don't think we really need right now. No. So maybe read another Bradbury story, maybe Mars is Heaven, or there's one about escaping from Mars. The guy who I won't spoil it now by trying to summarize it for you, but
and then there's always Royco.
There's always Royco. I enjoy doing all of that, and I will get back to doing all of that. But for right now, I'm sure you understand special circumstances dictate special behaviors and special episodes. Yep. One thing that remains constant is we really don't want you to forget our gourmet coffee guidelines. See, transition like a pro, like a goddamn pro. If you can afford to buy an espresso-based beverage or some Romulan ale for us, for yourself, buy one for us. This is not a charity. This is, in fact, our job. Kapla. If you can spare $5 a month, please spare $5 a month at patreon.com/ProLevPod. Please share our show on social media. If you're a time traveler, share it in the past. We would really appreciate that. That might be great. Maybe we secretly are the Pod Save America kids, and we don't know it because we're trapped in a causality loop. And if you love this podcast, please get someone else to listen to it too. And thank you for doing that.
Hey, Driftglass, how are the Internet Kitties doing this week?
This week, this very week, the week we're in, the Internet Kitties say rest in power, David Lynch. And speaking of science fiction, we forgive you for Dune.
Let's think about living.
Think about living.
Let's think about loving.
Think about loving.
Let's think about the hooping and the hopping and the popping and the loving, lovey, dovey.
Lovey, lovey, lovey.
Let's forget about the wine and the crying, the shooting and the dying, and the fellow with the switchblade knife. Let's think about living. Let's think about life.
The Professional F podcast is recorded under a Creative Commons license. Copyright 2024-25, GGBG Productions.